Hello everyone, I recently purchased a Panasonic Lumix G9 camera and thought I'd do an overview of this camera to help some of you get familiar with it and to understand what all the buttons, lights, displays and components are for and what they do. The G9 is aggressively priced right now and you get a lot for your money, hence why I picked one up. Before I digress, let's get started. This video is going to be a long one and that is because there is a lot to cover, but if you're new to the G9 you'll find this very useful. I'm going to start from the front of the G9 and I'm assuming you have the G9 in the factory default settings since the camera can be heavily customized to your shooting needs. Now, I said we're going to be starting from the front of the camera, but it will actually be the top. We start here with the, let me turn this G9 around. We start here with the charging and wireless connection lamp. In terms of charging, it is a no-brainer. When the light is on, camera's charging, and when it's not, it's obviously not charging. Now, when you use the G9's wireless or Bluetooth feature, this light will be blue. When it is steadily lit blue, it means you either have the Wi-Fi or Bluetooth on, and if it is blinking blue, it means it is sending data. You can also choose to turn this light off completely within the options. Next up, we have the motion video or motion picture or video button. As you might be aware, the G9 is a powerful video tool and very close in terms of features to the renowned GH5 from Panasonic. Essentially, this button can be used to start or stop video recording. You can use this button to record video from any mode that you're in. So as you can see there, I'm currently in the aperture priority mode. This little symbol here, if you can see it on this video, is the focus distance marker. This reference marker on the body is used to measure the focus distance and useful when taking pictures with manual focus or taking close-up pictures. This is what you use or you can use to measure the distance. Next up, we have the exposure compensation button. You can use this function when you cannot achieve the correct exposure because of the brightness difference between the subject and the background. Use this to compensate the exposure to positive or negative until you feel the image is correctly exposed. The ISO button, or ISO. This button allows you to control the sensor's sensitivity to light. Think of this as gain on an amplifier. If you play, guitar and have used the guitar amp. The white balance button. White balance adjusts the color of the white according to the light source to make the color hue closer to what is seen by the human eye. Typically, leaving this setting on auto white balance is sufficient in most circumstances. The front dial. This controls various functions depending on which mode you are in. The program shift mode, it controls the exposure settings. The aperture mode, which I am currently in, it controls the aperture value, and in shutter mode it controls the shutter speed, and in manual mode it controls the aperture value. You can change the settings on the camera to, well, allow it to control what you decide. Now, we have here the, I'm going to switch the camera around, the on-off switch. In addition to being the on-off switch, this also serves another purpose, to turn on and off the light for the top status LCD. I'm just going to demonstrate that to you quickly. So camera is now on and you should hopefully, I don't know if we'll be able to see this here, but hopefully you should see you're not going to probably see that, it's too much light, but anyway, that's now on and there we go, that's now off. Now we look at the front of the camera and we're looking at the auto focus assist lamp and the self timer indicator. In the AF assist lamp mode, it will illuminate the subject when the shutter button, and this is the shutter button here, when it is pressed halfway, making it easier for the camera to focus on the subject in low light. This is also a self-timer indicator that you can set the self-timer to either 2 seconds or 10 seconds. Next up, we have function button number 4. This is one of the many function buttons on the camera. You can change what it does by holding any of the function buttons down, and it will present you with a menu, and you can change it from there. Down here, just point to it. Down here we have function button number 5. By default, this is set to preview mode. Pressing once allows you to see the effects of the selected aperture so that you can check the depth of field, and pressing it once more will show you the effect of the current shutter speed so that movement can be confirmed and displayed. Again, you can tailor what this button does by holding it down and selecting another item from the menu. Next up, we have the rear dial, which is this button, or dial here rather. This, like the front dial, performs different functions depending on what mode the camera is in. Typically, you will find it either controls aperture or your shutter speed. The status LCD. This is a feature that is typically found on professional cameras, and it is nice that Panasonic have included one on the G9. At a glance, it will show you a lot of your camera settings, such as actually I'm just going to switch on the camera so you can see what it displays. So hopefully you can read that. So the kind of information that you can get on the status LCD is it can show you battery levels, your shutter speed, your ISO level, how many pictures you can take, whether you're shooting in RAW, JPEG. There's quite a bit of info you can just sort of see by just glancing at the top LCD. The G9 also has, and again these are going to be extremely difficult to see, but you should probably be able to see that on that side and another on here. Okay, so what these are the stereo built-in microphones on the G9. Be careful not to cover those when you are using the built-in microphone in the G9 to record audio. Next up, we have the hot shoe and hot shoe cover. I'm just going to remove the cover so you can see the contacts rather for the flash here. So this is where you would attach an external flash, and I'm just going to quickly show that, demonstrate that rather. So I've got a Godox, let me just show you, Godox TT350O for Olympus and Panasonic. So I'm just going to attach that to the top, or the hot shoe rather, and there we go, that's securely connected, and I'm just going to get that connected. So there we go, we've now got a flash connected to our G9. Next up, we have the mode dial, which is this here. Hopefully you can see that properly. Yep, the mode dial. You can use this to select a recording mode, such as the intelligent auto, program mode, program auto exposure mode, I should have said, shutter priority, aperture priority, manual, video mode, and there's your custom 1, 2, 3, and I think this is your creative picture or video mode. Next up, you have a actually, if you can see this here, you have a mode dial lock. So when you press it down, you can no longer change the mode dial. You need to unlock it, and then you can see you can switch between the different modes. Now this is there so that you cannot, if you lock it, you can't accidentally change the mode whilst you're shooting. Just below the mode dial, you will notice a mode dial rather, or a drive mode dial. So you can use this to select between single. You can use this to select between sort of single, burst mode 1, burst mode 2, 6K photo or 4K photo, post focus, and then you have your self timer, and then finally your time lapse mode. Next up, we're going to move slightly towards the front of the camera to this port here. Actually, I'm just going to remove this cover. So this is the flash synchro socket. This allows you to connect an external flash using a cable. So yeah, like I connected the Godox flash to the hot shoe. You can connect a flash to the G9 using a cable. The manual does state that the cable should not be longer than 3 meters. So if you are running a flash using a cable and you're running into issues, that possibly could be why. Let me just pop this cover back on. Actually, we can do that later. I'm going to just go round to the side of the viewfinder here, and you will notice this V mode button. This allows you to switch between the different magnification levels the G9 has on its electronic viewfinder. So this is the electronic viewfinder here. Next up, you probably noticed both of these hanging off the sides of the G9. These are these are the two shoulder strap eyelets for connecting a wrist or neck strap. Next up, we have, and this might be difficult to see, we have what's known as the diopter adjustment dial. Now, adjust this until you can clearly see the viewfinder. Typically, those that wear glasses will need to use the diopter adjustment to make sure you can clearly see the image in the viewfinder, or if whether you have the display items clearly viewable. Next up, we're going to be moving towards the side of the G9, and I'm just going to open this flap at the top here. So first of all, we have the mic socket, and as the name suggests, this is a 3.5mm mic input, so that you can record better quality audio than what the built-in microphones provide. Just below this, we have the headphone socket. Again, it's a 3.5mm headphone socket. This allows you to monitor the sounds that are being recorded by connecting a headphone to the G9. And below that, we have I'm just going to close these. There we go. Below that, we have a full-size HDMI socket, HDMI port rather, which has a number of uses. So firstly, what I tend to mainly use it for is I connect this to my living room TV so that I can display images or playback video to review and see it on a larger screen. Other uses include connecting to an external recorder for video. Finally, below the HDMI port, we have this USB connection to transfer pictures or videos to your PC. You can also use this to tether for shooting purposes, or as if you wanted to use the G9 as a webcam via the Lumix Tether app, you would connect the USB cable to your computer. In terms of charging, you can trickle charge the G9 from a USB power bank. However, you cannot power the G9 directly from this USB port. Now we move back over to the front of the G9, And first of all, we have the lens detach button here. You must press this before you start to remove a lens from the camera once attached. And I'm just going to demonstrate that for you. So I've got the 12 to 32mm lens attached on my G9 here, and I'm going to remove that now. Okay, so you can see here now I've exposed the sensor, and yeah, just one thing to be wary of: if you don't need to have if you don't have a lens attached to your G9, use a cover to cover it up. So we've got down here now the function lever. By default, this switches between silent mode, which turns off all sounds and uses the electronic shutter. You can tailor this to your own needs in terms of what it functions as. Next up is the, probably notice this little pin here. This pin lock is what holds the lens in place when attached, and obviously I don't know if you can how well you can see that as I press this lens detach button, that pin goes in. This in itself is the micro four thirds mount. That's a sensor there. Again, never touch the sensor, and if you need to clean the sensor, I would sort of recommend getting it professionally cleaned, or look up guides online, but again, that's entirely up to you. The lens fitting mark, so when you're connecting a lens, most lens will have another, I'm just going to show you that, an indicator so you can see there, and all I'm going to do is line that up with the red mark on the G9, and there we go, I've connected a lens to the G9. Now we move to the rear of the camera. This here, I'll just open that up. This here is the fully articulating LCD. It's actually a touchscreen. It's a large LCD touchscreen. I'm just going to switch it on, so as you can see there, and you can see that I'm running through the various menus, and yeah, you can also, when in playback mode, pinch to zoom. You get the idea. Panasonic, pretty much all their cameras have a touchscreen display on them. Next up, we have here on, actually be useful to keep the camera on. Next up, we let's just go to single. We have our playback button. So that's right up here. This allows you to play back or review pictures or videos that you have taken. Next up, we have what's our function button number 3, and also our live viewfinder button. This allows you to switch the live viewfinder on and off, or to set it to auto mode. You can also change this button to perform a different function if you wish. In order to do that, just hold down the button, and you can see you've got a menu there now, which is asking you, well, what do you want to select? I'm not going to change it. I'm going to leave it because that's its default setting. Next up, you might just notice this here, just below the viewfinder. This is the eye sensor. This sensor switches on the live viewfinder when you bring it up close to your eye. You can change how sensitive it is in the camera settings. Above that is the viewfinder itself, and this housing here is the eye cup for the viewfinder. You can remove this to clean it or replace it if you wish. Next up, now this might be a bit difficult to see on this video because it's very tiny. You probably notice these little holes here just by the view side of the right hand side of the viewfinder. This is the speaker on the G9. Next up, we have I'm just going to turn the camera off, it will just be less distracting. And there we go. Okay, so next up we have the joystick. You can use this to move around the autofocus point, and you can change within the settings what function this provides. I tend to just leave this on the default so that you can use it to select your AF points. Now, next up, we have our function 1 button, and by default, this is also the autofocus mode selector. You can change this if you want. Use this to select, to change between the various autofocus modes the G9 offers. I would suggest reading the AF guide that Panasonic has released for the G9, which was introduced, I believe, after the firmware 2.0 update. I may be wrong on that. If I am, just let me know. Next up, just above the function 1 button, we have our autofocus auto exposure lock button. You can use this to lock the focus and exposure when shooting pictures or videos. You can also set this button to be what is known as back button focus. That's where you don't use the shutter and you use this to select or to focus. Just housed around this button is our focus mode lever. This allows you to switch between either autofocus single or flexible, autofocus continuous, I'm just going to demonstrate that, or manual focus. Now, continuing around the back of the G9, first of all we have here, and I hope you can see this on the video, the cursor buttons. You can see a up, down, left and right cursor button. You can use this to navigate through the camera's menu, so I'm just going to demonstrate that quickly. So you can see up, down, and then left, right and left. Yeah, you can also set these buttons. So if I just hold one down, I can again customize to, you know, so that when I press the right, it selects one of these. So you can see that this is also, or these 4 directionals or directions are also your further function buttons, so you can set them to do whatever you need if you want to customize your camera like that. Next up we have the actual control dial. Again, I've got mine set up to control the ISO. Again, you can run through the menu to get it to do what you need it to do. Before leaving that, we also then got the menu set button, and that just brings up the main menu for the G9. And yes, again, you can change this if you want, but yeah, I don't see many people doing that. Now, we're just going to come around to the side of the G9, and I'm just going to switch the camera off. Close the lens. Okay, so here we have a remote socket. I'm just going to, come on, bit fiddly to take off. There we go. That's our remote socket. You can connect a wired remote to the G9, which will then function as a shutter button. This is useful when you want to avoid making any camera movement when taking a picture or video with the camera on a tripod. Next up, we have the SD card door housing, or housing door. I'm just going to open that, and inside there we have our card slot, SD card slot number 1 and SD card slot number 2. We are now getting close to the end of this video, and I'm just going to show you a few other buttons before I get to the underside of the G9. So again, I'm going to just turn on the camera, so it'll be easier to demonstrate. Okay, I'm going to extend my lens. So there we go. So next up we have our function button 2, which is also our quick menu button. So this allows me to, as the name suggests, to bring up a quick menu which allows you to change several settings for shooting pictures or video. And you can again customize this to, add or remove elements from the quick menu. The display button, as the name suggests, you can use this to select various views for the LCD display or the viewfinder, and I'm just going to demonstrate that now. Let me just come out of the quick menu. So you can see as I'm pressing that, you're getting different options, and now that's a display off, and there we go. I prefer this setting here. Again, you can set it to exactly how you want. Now we are really getting towards the end of this video, and all I have to now cover is the underside of the camera. So first up we have our this is the battery door. However, this is the release lever for the battery door, actually. So that's a release lever for the battery door. I'm just going to demonstrate how to open. So I'm just going to flick it into the open, and then there we go. That's the door open, and there we go. We've now closed it. You've got this flap here, which is the DC coupler cover. The G9 can be powered using an optional AC adapter along with a DC coupler. This means you can power the camera from the mains and not have to worry about the battery. Next up here we have the cover for the optional battery grip for the G9. This the battery grip will hold an additional battery, so one more battery in addition to the one you have in your camera when you use the battery grip. And finally here we have our tripod mount. That's it in terms of buttons and functions the G9 can offer. If you've got any specific questions, by all means leave comments or questions for me in the video, and I'll be happy to answer them. I know in the past others have requested specific videos on other cameras I've got. If you've got a request, again, leave a comment in the video. Just for disclosure purposes, I haven't been sponsored for this video, and this Panasonic G9 is mine. I purchased it with my own money, so Panasonic or anybody else hasn't given me this to do this overview. It's all with my own money that I've earned from working. Yeah, if you appreciate this video, please give it a thumbs up, and it'll be great if you could hit that subscribe button as well. And I will see you all soon. Cheers. Bye.